Hello, and welcome to this third lecture on ecosystems in this course on excellence in digital strategy. So, the purpose of this module has been to help you understand how to develop and use ecosystem for digitalization. And what we will do is, after having looked at what is an ecosystem, when is the developing ecosystems important and useful, we will take a look at the detailed steps of how can you develop and use ecosystems to create higher value. So, as we had said, let's quickly recap each of the steps of engage, orchestrate, involve that can be used to shape a strategy, shape an environment for an industry using ecosystems. So the first step is engage, right? So how to engage other powerful stakeholders? So ecosystem will have other powerful stakeholders. So how to engage other powerful stakeholders in practice? Any thoughts? So what you need to do is start with a collaborative shared vision that you need to do. And for that, either before or after, you need to identify the stakeholders to enlist for the vision. If you are developing the vision yourself, you can develop the vision first and then identify the stakeholders to enlist for this vision. Or if you want to collaboratively develop and you have some idea of what you want to do, then you can identify the stakeholders first and then develop the collaborative vision. Then you understand and incorporate their interests, stakeholders' interests in the whole program that you want to develop, in the ecosystem that you, and then you launch the ecosystem at the right time. So broad 4 steps are used in engaging the stakeholders in developing the ecosystems. So let's look at how can we develop a collaborative shared vision. So what should this collaborative shared vision be in practice? That's the first question before we talk about how can we develop that. So the shaping vision outlines how the intended collaborators in the system can solve a problem dramatically better than any individually company can, and how they can stimulate demand, build on the economic infrastructure of the ecosystem to address that demand, and remove the potential constraints like regulatory barrier, etc. The vision obviously needs to be mutualistic, so as to say, emerging either through an iteration with the stakeholders or from within your own firm. The vision needs to be win-win to list all other stakeholders and should anticipate that you as an orchestrator need to share resources without the expectation of an immediate return. The collaborative quality will build trust, goodwill, and influence that will pay you dividends, rich dividends down the line. Whatever resources you share should come at a limited cost, and the vision should can emerge, as we were saying, either singularly or collaboratively. You as a orchestrator or shaper should think of vision setting as an ongoing conversation with your ecosystem. Participants, especially when it may be sometimes difficult to understand these external parties' interest in beforehand, and because these interests will evolve over a period of time. This strategy to be successful, competition is useful when the competition is of a limited concern, because the strong network effect inherent in the system will structure and will work as in this ecosystem structure. The greater number of participants, the greater will be the value of system to those participants. So there should be a network effect. The vision does not imagine a precise end state of the final product or a final spec. Rather, it details the mutual value proposition, how the value is created and shared with the various players of the ecosystem. This is different from a visionary approach, obviously, where you have a specific outcome. So it's an evolving procedure. The second step is identification of the stakeholders to enlist for the vision and understanding their and incorporating the interests. So how do you do that? So in some cases, the set of stakeholders can be easily identified in advance, as we were discussing, but sometimes it is not possible or not even desirable. If the attractiveness of your platform depends on the variety and dynamism of your offering, then you need to cast the net wide in terms of getting the stakeholders, identifying the stakeholders. If you are developing a new market, you may need to keep have key opinion leader, firms that build complementary product, customers, and sometimes even competitors. So that's the kind of a range of stakeholders that you need to identify. Then you need to understand their interest. So how do you understand their interest? This interest should be aligned, interest of the stakeholders of the ecosystem should be aligned with those of the ecosystem as a whole, because otherwise how would they work together? So you need to then map how the interest of stakeholders fit with the potential ecosystem, how they contribute, how they might influence other players. You need to ask, are the stakeholders interested in obtaining access to your customers' brand and IP, and are you willing to share that? Do they want to leverage your firm's scale or resources, and are you willing to share that? So that's the kind of interest that you need to figure out. Then the question, once you have these stakeholders of the ecosystem engaged, you need to orchestrate them. You need to, and that can be done in two ways, two key steps: building a platform and operating the platform. That requires real work. And both the steps will facilitate interaction and monetization of the various players of the ecosystem. They will lock in the stakeholders and provide a focal point for you to deploy your influence. So what kind of platforms to build in practice is the question if you want to build an ecosystem. See, the goal of the platform should be to facilitate direct interaction between the participants of the ecosystem and between the participants and customer, so either of the two or both of them. So the ideal platform should reduce the transaction costs, should have minimal transaction costs for the stakeholders and management costs for the orchestrator. Then only you'll be able to get as many people, as many transactions possible. The successful platform normally provides feedback to participants so that they can adjust the contribution without direct interventions from you as an orchestrator. And these good platforms finally lock in the value by inducing network effect that makes it unattractive for the various stakeholders to leave or rivals to build competitive ecosystem. For these reasons, most of these platforms are generally the digital marketplaces that facilitate interaction at low cost and provide instant market-based feedback. But they can take different forms, including either non-digital or non-marketplace formats, like the conference organized for the regulators and doctors. They can also constitute a set of contractual standards that lay out the rules of the collaborator engagement. Once having built the platform that can potentially engage and lock in and provide value to the stakeholders, how do you operate the platform? So building a platform is the start, but it's like a football stadium. There's no game until the players are out in the field. So you don't need to have all the stakeholders playing on your platform. And you need to actively manage the platform through selective control of the few variables, not a total control. It would be impossible and undesirable to control everything, and the focus should be on locking in customers, the stakeholders here, monetizing the value created and adjusting the system to maintain a win-win situation. Successful ecosystem orchestrator often control the rules and mechanisms for interaction. So as a orchestrator of the ecosystem, you need to focus on rules and mechanisms of interaction. And that will allow you to catalyze rather than directly manage in detail the evolution of the ecosystem. As a platform manager, you need to keep the value within the ecosystem by making participation in the ecosystem attractive, by maximizing network effect. That will discourage potential rival participants or rival outsides of the ecosystem from building a competing base. And this you can do by sharing your resources with strings attached, offering things that have value inside the ecosystem, but once they go outside the ecosystem, they don't have any significant value. And the last stage of developing ecosystem is to allow it to evolve after having engaged an orchestrator. So what you need to let it evolve is drive the depth and breadth of stakeholders' contribution, that various members of the ecosystem, and quick adaptation to the external change. So you need to drive the breadth and depth as well as keep watching for any changes and then quickly adapt the platform to that. Maintain diversity of different types of stakeholders, even at the cost of efficiency. And persistently invest in opportunity to maximize network effect by extending or scaling the platform. This should result in end user uptake and fast growth of the platform, and that will be the thing that ecosystem is the participants would be looking for. So how to evolve the ecosystem in place? So you need to gain a certain critical mass, right? And once you do that, you need to keep the ecosystem flexible. Shaping environments change, the ecosystem must also change accordingly. As your platform of your ecosystem grows, you should allow the stakeholders mix to change to maintain alignment. We have seen if you don't do that, ecosystems can fail because if you become rigid, that is the end of the development of ecosystem. Sometimes you can fall prey to temptation to overextend your control, alienating the stakeholders. Sometimes it is the lure of efficiency and specialization that will make you reduce the number of ecosystem players or redundancy between them to lower management costs. Ultimately, these tendencies damage the ecosystem's long-term appeal and adaptiveness by reducing its diversity and dynamism. And if only one player that can produce certain offering, ecosystem risks being locked into that player's demand. So you need to have diversity. So having looked at all that in terms of how can you effectively develop an ecosystem using the shaping strategy, isn't it time to summarize the digital strategy excellence? Yes, that's what we will do in the next lecture. So thank you so much for watching this third lecture of how to develop and maintain and use ecosystems in this course on excellence in digital strategy. I hope you've learned a lot of new things you have enjoyed, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture.